Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Now, today we're going to be talking about media and technology, along with some of the ways in which that technology affords us the opportunity to communicate with others, how we kind of strike our own methods of communication and connecting with other people through technology. So we'll be talking about some gender differences in communication, as well as kind of how we communicate with our faces, as well as with technology that's kind of afforded all around us. Let's get started. So, what is technology? Technology is a phrase that's kind of thrown around in a lot of areas, but it may mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, for instance, technology, the prefix techne, means art, skill, or craft. And logos means logic, the utterance in which inward thought is expressed. So really, technology is kind of this discussion surrounding the way things are gained in society. So technology is always forward thinking in that regard. Let's move to the next slide. So there's motivation behind consumption of technology, right? We don't just pick up a camera or pick up a TV remote controller and say, you know what, let's see what's on the Fire Stick. That doesn't happen. There's always a motivation why we're doing something. Even if it's to pass the time, to do some sort of surveillance around the world, to see what's going on elsewhere, to learn more about ourselves, to manage our emotions, which is a little bit more of mood management theory. We holistically know that the way in which we consume media, there are always antecedents behind it. And so uses and gratifications gets at this. The idea to be entertained, the idea to be informed, surveil, pass the time. Additionally, motivation behind consumption of technology or media is based on our own internal psychological well-being. And so the self-determination theory looks at this. It considers competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So competence first being, I'm competent to pick the right piece of technology I want to use. 2, autonomy, I can do it on myself, on my own. And 3, relatedness, I can relate to other people through this consumption. I can share with other people, look what I'm doing on Facebook, look what I've just watched. And so ultimately, use of technology, especially under the uses and gratifications paradigm, is typically thought of to be hedonic, that it's fun, it's entertaining, it's kind of whimsical. And so hedonic consumption is supposed to be fun. It is not necessary. And so much of what we do with technology and with media as a result is fun. It is meant to kind of be for pleasure, if you will. Let's move along. So some of the assumptions of uses and gratifications, which is an approach in mass comm theory, is that we use media for an anticipated gratification. I use Facebook because I am checking on perhaps a woman that I like and I want to see what she's up to, or I want to see what my best friends are up to. I want to see what my friend Danny is up to. Love Danny. Want to see what Danny's doing. So I really do have a friend named Danny, but there's always a reason for it. And then there's an anticipated gratification. I think by going on Facebook, I'm going to feel better or I'm going to learn something new. Audiences are active then. So we're active information seekers and are directed toward goal achievement. My goal is to learn more about something about somebody, for instance. Audience members take the initiative in linking media choices with gratifications. Media compete with various other sources of need fulfillment for individuals. And individuals are sufficiently self-aware to be able to report their interests and motives. These are meaningful choices that are made. And so there's no accidental use of technology in media. That's really what uses and gratifications is coming down to. When we really look at it, when we look at people kind of on their phones, we're saying, what are they doing with their phones? Or, it's kind of a waste of time to just be online and just kind of surfing. There's always some sort of use. There's always some sort of anticipated gratification from use. And audiences are active media users. We don't always use media at an active level. Sometimes we might say, let me just do this and kind of look through this, maybe on more of a subconscious level. But at the uses and gratifications approach, we look at audiences as active media users. They are actively making a selection here. There must be some sort of motivation behind it. This is kind of the forerunner for a lot of research in media and entertainment. When WWE, Bravo, USA Network, MTV, YouTube Red, or anybody, Hulu, Netflix, HBO Go, when they all do audience studies, the idea is that audiences are watching their shows for some reason. And it's important to know that reason, both from a creative standpoint, making sure the show's theme is in line with subsequent episodes and that everything is kind of streamlined in that regard, but also from an advertising perspective and public relations perspective. What do people think of when they think of HBO Silicon Valley, which I'm currently watching? What do people think of, when they think of The Break with Michelle Wolf? What are people thinking of when they think of, The Office, a cherished favorite of mine? So it's important to understand why people come to these programs and why people, will use a tablet or a smartphone. So this approach really has a lot of bearing when we start to kind of think about why people are doing this, and are there things that we can anticipate or predict based on audience data that we have available to us. Technology affords us those opportunities. And let's also not forget, if you bust out your phone or smart TV, there are apps everywhere. The apps are not a mistake. The apps are meant to provide you with streamed content, but they are also tracking what you do. An app is meant to track user information, gender, location, the amount of shows that you watch, how long do you watch, genre, other things that you might be facing when you're engaging in some sort of content that's measurable. And so it helps NBC when they put out an app to know who's watching what, who likes what can they do differently, and guiding them along with even commercials. We have a lot of people in Westchester who watch Will and Grace. People in this area also seem to really like Starbucks. Maybe we should do commercials with Starbucks. And NBC is notorious for doing commercials with Starbucks, or even doing product placement with Starbucks in their show, The Voice. And so it's very, very important to work hard to understand why people do something with media and technology. There's quite a bit there. Let's move along. So finally, in kind of summing this up, a further breakdown is necessary. So the audience may have a need. There's a cognitive orientation. So we use media that reflects our cognitive orientation. I think cognitively, TV will give me this, this, and this. I think this, this, and this of television. So I think of TV as a passive medium in which I can put my feet up and watch an episode of Silicon Valley or Big Little Lies or whatever it might be, and I can just kind of chill out. That's how I feel. That's my cognitive orientation toward television. And so I can just watch it, for that matter. And so I may get some sort of diversion there, right? Media allows us to distress from our lives as personal identity. We may also be seeking something that resonates with us and helps us to understand ourselves. And so for the popular Jersey Shore show that was on MTV and has since witnessed a rebirth with Jersey Shore Vacation, Family Vacation for that matter, people watch it to an extent because they want to know what it is to live a Guido lifestyle. And I know that sounds weird. And aside from the entertainment value that show may have, or really may not have, people will watch it to better understand themselves. If they subscribe to a Guido lifestyle, if they want to live like that, or if they are in fact other Guidos or self-identified Guidos in New Jersey and they're fist pumping and they're crazy for that lifestyle, it can serve as kind of a bellwether for, if they're doing things well, or if they should be hitting the gym more, or they should be wearing different kinds of clothes, or maybe even using different kinds of hair gel. Those thoughts creep up because that show is basically a how-to manual in living a Jersey Shore / if you will, Guido kind of lifestyle. And, that phrase, being a Guido, has now since kind of been adopted into a particular kind of lifestyle. And so that's one aspect that we might pull. Finally, there's interactivity. The degree over which media and our ability to engage in media discourse influences our uses and gratification. And so this really plays into social media and gaming, perhaps surrounding entertainment. So for social media, I might watch The Real Housewives of Orange County or Vanderpump Rules on Bravo, and I might say to myself, I got to tweet this. I can't believe she just threw her drink at somebody. That's kind of an engagement, right? That's kind of an interactivity with the media itself. I have control over it. I am extending my own thoughts to the program and kind of creating some sort of mishmash in which I am part of the entertainment. I'm offering what I think to perhaps a Twitter handle on Bravo, and so other people can see this. Let's move along. Perception, memory, and processing. And so when we think of entertainment and when we think of technology, the way that we perceive, memorize, and process is really important when it comes to media. Cultivation theory states that we cultivate information about the world around us. If we watch enough late night news, if we watch enough late night give me a second, Keith.
Yeah, let's start that again. And we could even start from the beginning of slide 6.
Why don't we do that? Let's look at the next slide.
Oh, sorry. Whenever you're ready.
That's fine. Let's look at the next slide. If we watch enough late night news and we say to ourselves, well, if we look at late night news on CBS, if we look at late night news on ABC or NBC or Fox, all of the 10 o'clock news, all of the late night news, there's a lot of crime. They kind of depict a lot of bad things that unfortunately go on in neighborhoods. And I know here in New York, they'll report on crimes that happen throughout the city. Now, there are, unfortunately, dozens of crimes that happen throughout the city on a given day. It is, after all, a city that has just about 10 million people in it. And so, as a result, there's kind of cherry picking that goes on, right? Not all news stories are going to be reported, let's say, right? If we think each crime is a news story in and of itself, not all news stories will be reported then. And so from this, a lot of academics have argued that cultivation theory can kind of explain why people might think African Americans always commit crimes, or Hispanic Americans always commit crimes, or certain minorities are certainly inclined to commit crimes. Part of this perception is from watching a lot of news late at night and seeing, African Americans, Hispanic Americans constantly being arrested. And it isn't to say that Caucasians don't cause crimes or commit crimes, or Asian Americans don't commit crimes for that matter. But if enough content is out there surrounding African Americans, surrounding Hispanic Americans, people may cultivate different perspectives or different notions about a neighborhood. That's a dangerous neighborhood. African Americans are inclined to kill and steal, and so I don't want to hang out there, and I certainly don't want to hang out with African Americans, right? And so cultivation theory explains this, that we can kind of cultivate or build perceptions around the world around us by watching the news, for instance. So we cultivate these perceptions. We also have social identity theory. I mentioned the Jersey Show earlier. With the Jersey Show, there's this notion of, again, adopting some sort of Guido lifestyle. I might socially identify with that group, right? We all kind of have groups that we identify. I myself like dressing in collared shirts and, probably a preppy look, if you will. Now, not that I'm a part of Preppies in Ink or anything like that, but for that matter, I do socially identify with a particular group. That's just kind of how it goes. I absolutely identify with this group. And so finally, social learning theory states we kind of learn without adults. We learn without organization. We learn without people telling us anything. Really, we're kind of a sponge. As soon as we are out of our mother's womb and into the world, we are exposed to a bunch of things, and we're constantly learning. Your parents might say to you, "How do you know that?" Or they might have said when you were a child, "How could you have possibly known that?" Yeah, social learning theory states that we're pretty much sponges, and any kind of information we interact with, we engage with, we digest, really becomes a part of our conceptual framework of the world and environment around us. Now, this comic states, and is very, very indicative of cultivation theory. If you keep watching that violence, your head is going to explode, splattering your mushy brains all over my brand new, nice, clean carpet. And of course, what would any 5 or 10-year-old say in this instance? Cool, totally cool. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. Let that happen. And so Cultivation theory, social learning theory, a lot of these studies have looked at children with television and the ways in which that they gain or surmise things about the environment around them. Let's move along. So consumer behavior and perception, if we're talking about technology, it's not enough to know that technology can kind of impact us without even knowing it, right? So far we know we have some motivations for consuming technology, and then we also know that technology has impacts on us, whether or not we're kind of cognizant of it. And so we have to deal with sensations, sensory marketing, and virtual reality for that matter when we think of consumer behavior. Now with sensations, it's taste, touch, smell, feel, hear, all of those things. And so our sensations are constantly being prompted not only by technology, but also by media for that instance. So any time that we put on a headset, for instance, and we're in some sort of virtual reality in which maybe we're in space, they are the company that has the headset that we are currently wearing. They're manipulating us. Video games serve as some sort of emotional manipulation. So does television, so does radio. The manners in which that we want to feel can be achieved by the kind of media or technology that we consume here. And so with sensory marketing, that's also part of it. Next time you step into an Abercrombie & Fitch, or the next time you step into a Starbucks, smell before you get in. Smell what's going on. There's a reason why we smell perfume and cologne and all of these different things when we're in a mall. Certain stores want to separate themselves from the competition. What better way to do that than to manipulate sensations that are typically not manipulated, such as smell, or it could be sight, or it could be feel, it could be touch. Let's move along. Consumer behavior, colors, and perception. Color is important with media and with technology. Colors, in fact, are duller to older people than younger people, hence why they prefer brighter tones. That's why your grandfather has that electric lime green shirt that you say to yourself, God, does he even know what he's wearing? It's because of that. So additionally, women also see colors better than men do. They are way more sensitive to shades. That is why your girlfriend, your wife, or your friend who happens to be female can see 3 or 4 different shades of green in a shirt, and you probably only see one, and you don't understand why she's hung up on it. It's because she can probably see more colors than you. Men are also, unfortunately, more likely to be colorblind. Sorry, guys, I wasn't thrilled with this either when I found this out, but this is the case. Now, you might say to yourself, yeah, this is a really good picture. It's a spring festival that's being celebrated here. Who cares? What does color have to do with media and technology? Well, quite a bit. Let's go to the next slide. Boom! As you can see here, colors are everything in media. And the way in which things are colored mean a lot of different things. We know with Facebook, it's blue and white. We can see with blue that it invokes strength, trust, smart, calm, faith, natural, stable. All of those adjectives are brought through by Facebook. That's what they convey. It's not just a random color for Facebook. No way. Netflix is red. Red is usually excitement and bold. It means immediacy, energy, passion, hunger. Could be anger as well. I don't know that Netflix is an angry brand, but it has energy. It's exciting, it's bold. We like that. We can think of other pieces of technology as well. And so with an iPhone can be white, it can be black. If it's black, it can be bold, rich, powerful, elegant. So is HBO for that matter. And as we can see from the icons here, a lot is being conveyed. Let's take Vanderpump Rules. All the way to the right, the ad that looks like it's an ad really for Victoria's Secret or Gap or something else, maybe Kenneth Cole. So Vanderpump Rules, purple for Vanderpump is royal, mysterious, arrogant, luxurious. It's creative. It's kind of sophisticated and sexy. Black, once again, bold, rich, power, elegant, as you can see. Even maybe a tinge of evil there as well. And God knows a lot of hijinks are on that show, and that's putting it mildly. Love, as we can see bottom, red, love, immediacy, energy, passion. There's definitely a lot of anger in love, as you can kind of tell from the picture. And so colors are incredibly important when we advertise, when we brand, when we think of a logo, when we think of a show, anything to do with communicating with people, a lot can be done with color. Let's move along. Consumer behavior and touch. Also, when we have technology, think about holding something and touching something. We touch an item, it can cause perceived ownership. It's why when we're in a mall, somebody wants to put, lavender lotion in our hands. It's not because they want us to feel good, although that's kind of a nice indirect benefit. It's really because they want us to feel it. Get in that car. Can you see yourself owning it? Can you feel it? Pick up that laptop in an Apple store. Can you see yourself owning it, feeling like it's yours? They create that because they know psychologically we have perceived ownership every time we touch or hold something for that matter. Our confidence is raised when we're able to touch a product. We feel more confident about purchasing it. Let's move along. So as part of this, part of the idea of why we watch media, why we engage in technology, there is this sense of voyeurism. Voyeurism has a dirty connotation, but it's this idea of watching others. And that's with Facebook, that's with Twitter, that's with a whole host of social media as well as reality television, right? In social media and in reality TV shows, we follow people, we watch people, we see what they do. And so it's kind of cool finding out about other people's secrets and desires. This kind of goes in line with effective disposition theory. The idea that we figure out what one person's morality is, like a character's morality, and then we decide if we want to engage with them and follow them. Don Draper on Mad Men is kind of an afflicted hero. He's kind of an anti-hero, really. He doesn't really treat women well at all. But I'm kind of intrigued. Not a good guy, but I don't know that he's 100% evil either. I'm kind of interested. It's kind of an instance of effective disposition theory there. Do we follow the character in the TV show through multiple seasons or do we not? We also have social comparison theory. The idea that we compare ourselves to others. We watch a reality TV show. Are we wealthier than some of the people? Are we better looking? Or are we not? And how does that make us feel? Let's move along. Identification with characters continues. So the idea of parasocial reactions or interactions, we have Barney Stinson here from How I Met Your Mother. I might have a one-on-one relationship with Barney Stinson. Will he ever talk to me? No. Can I kind of imagine a relationship with him? Sure. Some people have compared me to Ross on Friends, don't laugh, but I've gotten that quite a bit in my life. Doesn't help that I'm a professor as well. But because of that, I kind of have this weird one-on-one relationship with Ross. I can kind of see myself in him. And sometimes I might even talk to the screen and say, Ross, what are you thinking? Or like, you idiot. We have those interactions with TV characters, kind of these one-sided relationships. And then again, social identity theory kind of creeps up in here because, do I identify as a womanizer with Barney Stinson? Or do I identify more so, probably being a college professor, as is Ross Geller on Friends? Let's move along. Media multiplexity theory, the idea that our lives are multimodal. We use a variety of media to maintain relationships with others through telephone, text, email, and social media now. We kind of get to know people through a wide gamut of media platforms. The characteristics of these hold us in kind of mediated environments as they do in offline environments. So I can talk to my cousin Christina, I can text her, I can call her on the phone. These are different sensations that I'm acting upon, but it's also a different way in which that we communicate with each other through technology. Online exchanges are as real as offline exchanges are, right? If somebody texts me, if I receive a tweet, today it's as important as getting a phone call or kind of having a conversation. It has the potential to be, at least. A social tie drives the number and types of exchanges that occur between people as well. Let's move along. So continued, strong ties include people we have close relationships with. Media use indicates tie strength. If we're constantly tweeting, texting, it's very, very clear that we're close to each other. Adding or removing a medium can also alter people's weaknesses and strong ties, and the presence of a medium can create latent ties as well. Maybe we don't really have a lot to say or are very specific, so we tweet a lot, we text a lot. Maybe we like having in-depth conversations, we Skype a lot, and we also talk to each other on the phone. So additionally, from that, certain pieces of information are most appropriate for certain platforms. I probably wouldn't disclose the fact that I'm purchasing a house in a 50-minute phone call. Maybe I post it on Facebook. Or differently, maybe I do make phone calls and I tell people I've just purchased a house, because for me, that's the way in which to communicate that. It all depends on how we value mediums, and it all depends upon the kind of information that we have to disclose. Let's move along. So kind of differently from this, we're going to go into genderlex. We're going to go into differences between genders, as well as kind of how we communicate through facial expressions, kind of organic technology, if you will. What do we have at our own disclosures that we can kind of readily access? What do we have that we can access? Our hands, our mouths, our organic pieces of technology, if you will. It's kind of what we have naturally. So gender differences and subsequent communication foundation and consequences are important to understand. Meta-communication is communication about communication. So it's a reflective mode of communicating that previously was more abstract than actual words being spoken. So this kind of gets into body language. It kind of gets into the way that we might comment on other people's kinds of communication. It's kind of a little bit high level. I really wouldn't worry about it here. For now, worry about how genders communicate and how our faces communicate as well. Let's move along. So men are more interested in asserting independence, holding audience attention, and competing for stage talk. You'll see this on a lot of talk shows. You'll see this on a lot of programs, whereas differently, with women, there's a lot of report talk. It's essential to give information and support and to build consensus with one another. You'll see this on a lot of talk shows, perhaps like The View, that are female-driven, and elsewhere that are a little bit more interested in building up other people and really strengthening communication. Let's move along. Face negotiation theory. So this is the consideration that individuals are interested in maintaining a positive self-image. They want to show a good image across other kinds of culture. Maintaining face is universal. It's important to understand cultural differences, and there may be challenges when we're kind of talking to other people, right? It's one thing with technology to communicate to somebody. It's kind of subjective, but you know, when we talk face to face, we can use inflection, we can use humor. We try to make our communication as objective as possible when we talk to each other face to face, right? We're as transparent and clear as we can be. Our face concerns are highlighted in ambiguous or uncertain situations. So face work is concerned directly in influencing how interpersonal and intergroup conflicts are enacted. There's also this notion of individualism. Some cultures might hold individuals higher than a group, kind of what we do in the United States. Differently, in a lot of Asian countries, or in Asia, collectivism is kind of embraced, the tendency to privilege group interests and concerns over self-interests. Let's move along. And finally, in consideration of media and technology, in consideration of the way that we communicate with our own bodies, which is our own kind of organic technology, if you will, there's also power distance to consider. The difference between how less powerful numbers of institutions accept the power that is distributed unequally. In large power distance cultures, members may accept power differently through ranks, roles, and gender. Conversely, small power distance may be determined on performance and merit. And so this kind of gets a little bit into corporate culture, which is kind of what was touched upon in our last lecture, but the idea of power distance is also important. And really, when we think about technology, all of these things are important. If we think about the ways in which a company might create power distances from executives to employees, or the way in which technology may help a male speak to another male or a female speak to another female, it's important to think about the platforms that we have, because otherwise we're relying on our face, hands, and the way that we speak, which is perfectly fine, but in an increasingly speedy world in which a lot is going on and in which a lot of information is rapidly being disseminated from everybody, it's really important that we think about not only the technology we're using, but who are we talking to? Are we talking to a company? Is it a room full of females? Is it a room full of males? Should it matter? Clearly it does matter, but you want to be certain that when you have technology, you're thinking about the communication that you're inlaying in. Can people see my face? I'm going to be thinking about face negotiation theory. I'm going to be thinking about the ways in which I conduct myself and I communicate through Skype, which is a piece of technology, to a company or perhaps to an audience for that matter. Well, that's all the time we have for Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.